All right, we're with Adam Kedge of Albuquerque Academy in New Mexico, a high school of about 640 high school students. They're classification 4A of the 5 classes in New Mexico. He's been coaching for 30 years, 25 at Albuquerque Academy, 24 of those years as the head coach in cross country and track and field. An astonishing, whopping 31 total team titles, 14 in boys cross, 14 in boys track and field, 3 in girls cross country. He's had 13 cross country individual state champions and 86 track and field individual state champions. The team's been to Nike Nationals several times with a 3rd place finish in 2007, a 6th place individual finish from Ben Johnson. Also, Coach Curtis Beach, the 17-time state track and field individual champ, the Gatorade National Track and Field Athlete of the Year, the national high school record holder in the decathlon. Curtis Beach is a big-time name in our sport. He's got 2 sons that run Division I cross-country track and field at the Air Force Academy. Correct, Coach?
That is correct, yes.
All right, well, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Would you mind getting started by just telling us a little bit about yourself, your background in running, and what brought you to your position as coach today?
Well, thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. I started running. I was chatting with my wife just the other day that our canceled track season was the first time I had a spring off in 45 years. I started running as a 10-year-old in the 6th grade, or in the 5th or 6th grade I started running, and have been involved in track and field as a middle school athlete, a high school athlete, a college athlete, and then immediately got into coaching after that. I'm pretty much originally from New Mexico. I was born in Chicago, but have lived in New Mexico for 50 years and ran at the local university here, the University of New Mexico. Many of you know that now because it has a really, really strong cross-country program. When I was there, we were fairly strong, but not to the magnitude that they are right now. Coached in public schools for about 5 or 6 years, landed a job in a local private school here, like I said, at Albuquerque Academy, about 650 high school students. It's a really unique place to coach. It's kind of a training grounds for a lot of world-class athletes. We have a 320-acre campus, a 9-lane all-weather track where our campus sits. My office sits at about 5,470 feet. So we got a lot of things that make it conducive to producing good distance runners. We often attract, like I said, world-class athletes. I've seen Paula Radcliffe on our track, Hakeem Al-Garouche, Bob Kennedy. You can go down the list, Nick Simmons, wherever you want to go with that, Dathan Ritzenheim, Galen Rupp. They've all come to our campus and used our facility before.
That's awesome. So there's a lot to talk about today. One of the big topics is how people are handling the pandemic. And so just personally, how did it affect you when things started to shut down this spring?
It was March 13th, and our school was the first one in the state to cancel school. There was one of our faculty members had contact with somebody who had contracted COVID. And so I was at a junior varsity, our first junior varsity track and field meet, and school got canceled. We were a couple days away from spring break. And so at that time, we started getting into the mode of, okay, what do we usually do over spring break without the kids being there for a week? And what can we have them do in order to stay prepared? Personally, though, like you said in the introduction, I have a family, wife, and 3 kids, and 2 of them are college athletes. So when their season got canceled, I kind of filled my track and field time with taking them out to the track and timing their workouts from their coach, following them on the bike, on their long runs, doing stuff like that. So it was a nice break in that sense that I had an opportunity to still keep involved in track and field, spend some family time, rest, relax. I mean, it's been, almost 6 months now for all of us. I think our dog is in the best shape possible. My wife and I get out every morning and walk the dog, so we've been doing a lot of that. COVID-19, I'm almost sure that the 19 in COVID-19 stands for the number of years since my garage has been cleaned, and so I did that too. It took me a little while. Doing honeydews around the house, trying to stay busy, trying to stay out of trouble. Eagerly planning for cross country, but that's constantly changing too, and we can talk about that. That's constantly changing. Every week it seems like something's different from our state association, from our school, from our governor. And so, yeah, that's where we're at. That's how I've kind of filled it. My boys are back in school now. So, like I said, walking the dog and getting prepped up for school coming up here.
And then how did your team handle that when track started to shut down and school started to shut down? Did you carry on with your team? Did you send workouts? What did that look like for the spring before you guys finally realized, hey, this is over?
It was difficult, Justin, honestly. Like I said, we got a beautiful campus, a great place to work out. I was hoping just to send the kids with workouts and say, get these done, get on the track, get on the cross-country course, get on the hills, get in the weight room. But our school shut everything down, closed and locked the gates. And so that's, a couple square miles worth of places where people train that we couldn't even get on. So started to change the workouts. I told our kids that, adversity is we're used to dealing with adversity, and the more adversity that we have, the better it is for us come the state championship in track and field. But as time started to drift on, I went from sending out workouts, specific workouts, to sending out modified workouts, to getting to the point where we were starting to prepare the kids for their fall sports, whether it was football or soccer or cross country, and sending out workouts appropriate for that. To just intermittent contact with the kids, always being supportive, telling them that for them to abide by the rules and the guidelines that their parents set for them first. I didn't want to be the driving force of a young boy or girl saying I have to go out and work out when my parents say that I have to stay home. So being really supportive of them and being there for them. But as I stated in my opening statement, it's been hard. It's been hard to not be able to see the kids too much. We did meet for a while over the summer, but even that we had to shut down, and that changed. And we can talk a little bit more about how the summer played out for us here coming up too.
So as you transitioned into the summer then and started looking forward to cross country, what did the summer look like for your program? Were you allowed in-person meetings? Was everything still done remotely? What does your summer look like?
Our state and our state association shut everything down throughout June. And so at that point, from late May to June, I was just encouraging the kids to run on their own or to meet in small groups. And they were doing it pretty much. Like any school, we have some kids that are super motivated. Any successful school, we have kids that are super motivated and diligent, will work out no matter what the situation is, and other kids that might find their way to drift off just a little bit. So I'm not saying that we had everybody gung-ho and going for it. In early July, we started up with a couple of meetings, just with small groups, getting 7 or 8 kids together. And our restrictions were that we had to train in groups of 5, and meet in groups of 5, and do screening, take temperature checks, go through a series of questions, wear masks when you were showing up and when you were finishing. And so we started that off for about a week or two. And then in early part of July, our governor mandated that masks needed to be worn for all activities at all times when you're in the public outside of the house. And so we changed from wearing masks to practice to having to run in masks. And honestly, it just wasn't really working for us. I'm not blaming the governor or our state association. Our kids found it difficult. I threatened them. I was like the safety patrol, like in the 4th grade or 5th grade. Threatened them, was, chopping digits off. But after you chop 10 or 11 digits and you start getting to the toes, you don't run as well. And so we decided to shut it down at that point. And the kids are still running on their own. A lot of them still in small groups. Sometimes when they're out on the mesa, we have wide open spaces. Sometimes when they're out on the mesa, I'm not sure if they are 100% abiding by the state mandates set by our governor or by all the mandates set by the Activities Association. But that's not from encouragement from me. They're deciding to do what is best for them in consultation with their parents. And so that's where we're at right now. And now, like I said, we have some kids training. I've kind of backed off a little bit. Our season has been bumped twice. I don't know if you guys are aware of that yet, but we were going to start in late September, and now we're starting in early October. Our original start is usually in August, and so it got bumped into September, mid to late September. And now our start date, our first official day of practice is August 5th, and our state championship will be December 5th. So we'll have an 8-week season. With that, I'll just continue on with that. Our meets have to be limited to 100 total people, not 100 runners, but 100 total people. So that includes coaches or officials. We're finding inventive and creative ways to put on meets, like having a group of people show up, running, and then maybe an hour or an hour and a half later, maybe having another group, or just simply having smaller meets. Our 26-team home invitational has been reduced to 5 teams over the course of 2 days. We're doing some duels. We're doing some, staggered starts, all kind of inventive and creative things. But right now, it looks like we're going to have a cross-country season. I'm excited about it, optimistic that we can have it and hold it. But as you guys know, there in your part of the country, things are constantly changing. And so my plans that might be, in line today might definitely change tomorrow.
With the changes that you guys are implementing, will you be able to maintain your complete roster size? Are you going to have to make any cuts or anything like that? Or are you guys going to find ways to keep every kid involved?
Justin, one of the things that I was most proud of is that although our school's 640, smaller than, school that you might coach at, we had really, really high participation, sometimes getting up towards 100 boys and girls in cross country and you can do the percentage for 640 kids. That's a really good amount. But I'm probably going to have to carry varsity JV and C. The state is limited. The state association's limited us to 7 people per race. So I'm probably going to have to carry 21 boys, 21 girls, maybe up to 25 of each, just in case I have some sitting out. And so, although we've done some tryouts with some, minimum standards that they have to meet as far as being able to complete an endurance run and be able to run a certain distance in a certain time, we're going to have to get a little bit tighter on those and keep, like I said, 20 to 25 kids. The hard part also is, although I said practice starts on October 5th, we have 0 contact. We're not allowed to have contact with our kids from right now today until October 5th. And so I might have to have the first day of practice be the tryout, and kids are going to have to be responsible for their own fitness from now until October 5th.
Coach, one of the things that I think is just, probably one of the most outstanding aspects of your program, you look at the list of accomplishments that your team's been able to achieve over the years, you're doing all of this, and I think you could talk about this forever, and there would be so much advice that you could give to other coaches at small schools, but I think to be able to do what you've done over the years in terms of just the maintenance of a very successful program in a school that, relatively speaking, is that small, is there an approach or an aspect of your approach to coaching that you feel like has to be specific for a school that size that maybe you would have to look at differently if you were at a school, say, with 1, 2, or 3,000 kids at it versus what you have now?
Well, Greg, you're right. I could probably talk about track and field forever and cross country. I was looking forward to talking at the distance summit that you guys were hosting. I was looking forward to talking and getting barbecue at the summit this summer. And so I know you guys invited me, and it's let's talk track. Let's talk
Your
track.
invitation is good
And
for
I was thinking barbecue. That was my only thought. So the pressure's on next summer, fellas, that the barbecue is going to hold up to it. But as far as specific to my school, yeah, I would definitely do things different if I had the opportunity or even the luxury to coach at a public school with more students. But each one of us, every one of our schools is unique, and every one of our student population and families that we serve are unique in that sense, and you have to make what's best for you. Like I said, I opened up with my statement, I got this awesome campus, 320 acres. It's 3.5 miles to run around the outside. I have a cross-country course, a 5K cross-country course that's 10 to 20 feet wide, that is on campus 365 days a year, that doesn't cross over a sidewalk, doesn't cross over a baseball field or a parking lot. And we can use it every day, and it's hilly and it's all dirt. I have a track. And so although my school is small, I have 8 assistant coaches in track and field for the boys alone. So I know that I have some benefits that allow for us to be successful. I have great kids like any place else. But if I was at a public school and I had an opportunity to have a sports class, which we don't have at our school, or to have practice in the morning, which we're kind of not allowed to have at our school, then I would definitely do things differently. So my statement is this: all of us have advantages from our school. All of us have some setbacks that we're going to have to deal with. And you highlight the advantages, you make them your battle, your battle cry, or you even make your disadvantages kind of your battle cry. We don't have this, we don't have a track, we're running on a dirt track, or we're running on the sidewalks, but we're going to be the toughest damn, son of a guns on the sidewalk that you've ever seen. And so the one unique thing that we have is, I think that we have a direction and a philosophy and a spirit to our program that, I've obviously been part of and I've instilled on some of the kids, but that the kids have adopted and that they've made their own and they've taken ownership in. And if you can do that in a program, it doesn't matter that if you teach at a school that has 60 kids, 600 kids, or 6,000 kids. And trust me, there's schools that have 6,000 kids. I had the luxury and the opportunity to make it to Nike in the early years. And we went against, the Woodlands, and we went against schools that were just, CBA. We went against some of those schools, and it was an honor. But we made being 640 kids our battle cry too. Like, we're small, but we're tough, and you're not going to get us, And so it all depends on what you have. You push what you have, and you try and make up for what you don't, and you just keep moving forward.
Coach, we're going to transition to some training stuff now. First, I've got a quick question, though. You've been coaching for a long time and done a great job. How has the last 5 months forced you to innovate or be creative or figure out new ways of doing things that you hadn't done in the past?
Well, I think the one thing is that it's a call for all of us to have a little bit more personal responsibility. And so I've put that on my kids to have a little more personal responsibility. Justin, it's uncontrollable where we're at right now. But I was saddened and disappointed for my seniors, and I have to make sure that I make that really, really clear. We had a phenomenal track team. We weren't strong in every area, but I had some kids that were involved in track and field for a long time, like anybody else in their programs, that were just starting to make their breakthrough and on the cusp, as well as some really, really strong kids. I don't know how we did it. For years, we were a school that was mostly known for distance and some specialty events. But in recent years, we've had some incredible throwers. I've had three javelin throwers in the past 3 or 4 years that have thrown over 190 feet. And so it's just kind of been, we had a really strong program, and we were really looking forward to it. So as far as what's forced us to be inventive and creative, I know that that's coming up for this fall and for next spring, but it's also forced us to be patient and understanding and flexible. And I think those attributes are every bit as important as just saying, I'm changing this and we're doing a different type of workout, which we did and we will do. And so the changes in your training plan are definitely important, but just the changes in your attitude and your approach towards things and valuing things a little differently and a little more are equally as important, I would find.
So you touched on, making some adaptations and some flexibility, and you have an 8-week season that is delayed. And so how will your training plan for this upcoming shortened season look similar, different than what you've usually done in the past?
I've stepped back a little bit, as I stated, just in the last couple of weeks, and plan on stepping back for the next few weeks until our kids get adjusted to school in the new school. Our school is going to be different and look different than it has in the past. Just like each one of you at your schools, it's going to be different. And so I do want to give the kids that opportunity to continue with their fitness, continue to train, but to get adjusted to school. And then as we get into the school year, some of it's going to start online and then ultimately in person. I'll probably have more and more guidelines and suggestions for our kids to follow in order to get fit. But as far as the training for the last 8 weeks, our 8-week season, we're going to have to squeeze some stuff in. I just have to be very cautious and want to be very cautious. And I would say, if I was given a suggestion to anybody, is to, know what your program's about, know what the pillars in your sport, in your philosophy are, and stick to those, and don't try and squeeze everything in. And so I've been writing workouts and thinking about workouts and the format and structure. But I just really have to be super cautious about not wanting to do everything that we've done in the past, or not wanting to do everything and try and condense it into, 3-4 days of the week. Because really, if you do race every weekend or pretty close to every weekend, you only have 3 or 4 days to really get in work. And so, I'm going to have to find out what is most valuable to us philosophically and stick to those pillars of the philosophy of training. And that would be the recommendation I give to anybody. Know what your program's about, stick to that, and trim the fat.
Coach, you handled the segue perfectly for all of us here, so thank you for that. I wanted to look a little bit now and get into some of the more specifics of how you set up your program. You talk about pillars of training and those sorts of things. People always want to know from coaches everywhere what, basic things about their program. So for you, in a normal season, what type of weekly mileage are you looking at going through, and when you have a boy or a girl progress from their freshman year onto their senior year, or is that one of the things that you take into account mileage wise, or are you more of a time on the watch type?
No, I take into account mileage, although we don't specifically track it for every kid using a Garmin or using, a website or even just reporting back to some Google Doc or Google page. We definitely do keep track of mileage. I will say this, we're at altitude, and so what we do might be, 10% less in comparison to what you would do at sea level. And I know that some people would say, well, humidity or whatever, that would play a factor too. But we are at altitude. The other issue, I won't say it's a problem or advantage of being at altitude, is there's no such thing as altitude and flat. And so most places around the United States that are at altitude are mountainous or hilly places. And so you're always getting in hill work too. From our school, we run one direction almost every day, and half of our run and on a distance run is uphill, and then the other half is slightly downhill. We can run across, like along the river, and run flat, but it's hilly too. I would say that our upper level boys might tap out at about out of season, maybe 60-ish. In season, probably average upper boys like 45. Upper girls might max out at 45, and in season probably be like 35. Greg, I also have, kids get physical education credit at a younger age on my team. So I have some kids that are literally doing 15 miles a week, 12 to 15 miles a week, because they're 9th grade and they might not participate in the weekend practices that we would have, or might not even be able to go, more than, I got some kids where they max out on their long run 4 or 5 miles. Every year we do try and get all of our students up to at least an 8-mile run, about 4 or 5 weeks into the season, which is a lot for some of the younger kids that are 13 or 14 years old and haven't been running. And for other kids, they might max out at, a 13-miler or something like that. So I know it's not a completely specific set, answer to your question. So it definitely ranges. It progresses based on age, based on ability, and based on interest. And I also have obviously we've had really good teams. And so there's been some kids that have needed even more than that. I tend to like for them I encourage them to get in that extra mileage on their own time. It makes it easier to roll out the door at 6:30 in the morning, Greg, and get in 30 minutes of running and get your shower and go to school than it is for me to hold a 6:30 in the morning practice, for them to have to pack their breakfast, pack their lunch, get their shower, do all that stuff. So a 6:30 a.m. practice for me might take an hour and a half for the kids, whereas a 30-minute run from their house at 6:30 in the morning really only takes them 30 minutes. So we incorporate that sometimes too.
So you talked about that as it being something that, obviously you do take into account as you're going through planning of your training for a cycle. You talked about that as being one of your pillars of training. I was kind of interested in, what do you see as you would call it, your main pillars of training, the things that as you're planning, you really probably emphasize first and foremost?
the number one pillar of all athletics in high school is kids want a place to belong, and they want to be valued, and they want to be appreciated. And if you're doing that in your program, whether you're running a football program or a middle school cross country program, if you value your kids and you show them that you care about them and that you want what's best for them, then you're going to have a successful program. So how do you do that? One, you're there for them, not only just for practice, but you're there for them if you can on campus when you need to. You're there for them when they have the race of their life, but you're there for them even more so when they stink it up or they felt like they stunk it up, and you still support them. You show them appreciation. You treat them fairly in your program. You promote what they did. You recognize their achievements. If you do all of those things, then it doesn't matter what the sport is, you're going to run a quality program. If you do all those things as well, the parents are going to be on your side. They're going to support you. They're going to go to the end of the earth for you. They're going to run your banquet and schedule your summer activities and host dinners and whatever else you want. So that's the number one pillar. As far as pillars of training, we all know those: consistency in training, trying to do things daily, the development of the cardiorespiratory system or capillary system through long runs, working on strength and development. All of those things are pillars of any quality program. One program might do more of one thing or might call it something else. Doesn't matter if it's called a threshold run or an LT run or a tempo run or a fartlek or any of those things. Doesn't matter what you call it. You obviously have to have a wide variety of speeds and ranges of speeds that you get up to in the course of a week or a 2-week period. From the fastest of the fast, like you might hear Doug Solis talk about his hits that he does at Great Oak, or you might hear somebody talk about their flying 40s at another school, or you might hear about Timo Mosseret talking about his hill run up the canyon there that he does. And so all of us have different names or nomenclature for them, but valuing kids, being consistent, working hard, doing some strength, and varying your training. If I was to say those are the pillars, let me say them again. Valuing kids, number one, being consistent in training, working hard, doing the long run, having a variation of training and speeds.
Coach, in those training paces, we often talk here amongst friends and coaches about tempo runs, threshold runs, critical velocity, the subtle differences between them and things like that. What does a tempo effort look like at Albuquerque Academy?
I find that out of all of them, my kids have the hardest time executing tempo. I don't know if that's why you're asking the question, if you find that too. I find that out of all of the different types of workouts that we do, they have the hardest time executing what tempo is. The thing, and I'll go back to it, the thing at altitude, which is different than sea level, if you make a mistake at altitude, it's not like, oh, I can back off for 2 minutes in the middle of a race and then get to the 1.5 mile mark and feel good again. That doesn't happen at altitude. If you're racing at 5 or 6 or 7,000 feet, which we do, we go to a meet that's 7,350 feet. If you're racing at 7,000 feet and you take off too fast, it's a death march. You just go boop, boop, boop downhill from there. So tempo, I find that a lot of times my kids are a little too eager and go a little bit too fast. And so I really have to be cautious. Sometimes I break up a tempo more into what we would call a cruise tempo or a cruise interval pace, where I might take a 20-minute tempo and do, 3 by 7 minutes with 2 minutes, kind of like a fartlek tempo or something like that, or 2 by 10 minutes with a little break in between. We have a middle school course, and one of my favorite workouts is 2 by the middle school course, and our middle school course is 3K, and so it's about 10 minutes. 2 by 10 minutes, and you get 5 minutes in between, and you go semi-fast and faster. And that's what my only terminology for it. Let's start the first one semi-fast, and then the second one I want a little bit faster. And I tend to get a good tempo workout from that, and they just think of it as 2 by middle school course, and I'm thinking, well, this is my tempo. So.
Coach, I've got a couple more kind of COVID-based questions here. You mentioned that you're probably looking at making some roster adjustments this year with just having to stick to the guidelines and put the appropriate number of people on the course. Do you have any type of plan, you and your assistants, of what you might do to keep those other kids involved in the sport or the activity of running in the event that they don't make the team this year because of the rules?
Yeah, that's going to be difficult because, like I said, our kids sometimes flat out join cross country when they're a ninth grader to get their PE credit, and I understand that that's part of what we're providing as a school. And so I have to deal with them. Um, I think my first plan is that I might keep a few more students than what I can race every weekend and just tell them in advance that I'm going to try and find opportunities for you, whether they're time trials or pre-race races or something like that. But we also know that if you have a season, especially a condensed season, not everybody's going to be feeling chipper and full of energy every weekend. And so there'll be opportunities for kids. I'll try and make good on those opportunities. That's another, Greg, back to your question, that's another way that I keep our program running, is that anytime I have an opportunity for a kid to be successful, if I can bump a kid into varsity because another kid's resting, if I can get a kid a little bit of experience, I really try and do that. And so those are some of the things that I'm going to have to deal with. We're still going to talk, myself and my assistants and my athletic director. I want to do everything at my school in conjunction with the mission of our school. And so I want to make sure that kids are provided opportunities in that sense. But it's not going to be easy. In track and field, hopefully next spring, we'll be back to unlimited entries on the junior varsity or junior varsity meets and be able to get a lot of kids in there. Maybe even, when you think about it, Justin, maybe even train some kids and say, hey, if there's a couple road races going on locally towards the late fall and early winter, maybe that can be your opportunity to succeed as well.
Awesome. I've got one more tough question that I would classify as a tough question, and then we'll try to make things light again. What will your message be to your student athletes if the unfortunate happened and cross country was canceled? Have you thought about that yet?
Yeah, I don't think it would be much different than what I'm telling them right now. Be flexible, be willing to move forward, continue with your physical fit. I mean, one of the things, and we get away from this sometimes, especially in highly competitive programs, we have an aspect in our sport where running is great physical fitness too. I mean, we haven't heard of, we've heard of all these deaths and sicknesses in our country, but we haven't heard of this, avid runner who runs 90 miles a week that's, died of COVID. Well, one of the best ways to stay healthy is to be a runner. And so do it for the love of running too. I think that would be my message. Do it for the love of running. Do it for preseason track and field. Get ready for track and field. Maybe get an opportunity, like I said, to train for a road race or an indoor season. We don't do much indoor around here. Get an opportunity to be ready for track. And just be flexible and take what life gives you sometimes. It's not always rosy for all of us. I mean, we all face things far worse than not having the opportunity to run this weekend at the invitational that we've always gone to.
So Coach, as you move on, and let's again, I mean, assume that, everything kind of goes according to like an original plan and you have a regular training cycle. Talk a little bit about what let's say your last 4 to 5 weeks of your season is in terms of, and I know there's a little bit more discussion recently than there has been before about a peak, whether you believe in one or you don't, and how you implement it. What is that peak, if there is one, that you would assume that there is in your program? What does that look like for you in those last few weeks of your training cycle?
Our last few weeks will definitely consist of us maintaining some form of a long run, maintaining consistent training, monitoring our health, both our physical health from running as well as our illness and health, monitoring that closely. We'll work at least once during the week at race pace and maybe progress down into sub-race pace or faster. Whether it's doing VO2 max workouts or something of the sort. We'll work once at least per week on that. We'll have, like I said, some semblance of a long run and maybe even a medium long run. We'll still have races. We'll try and find opportunities in our races, maybe not for each one of them to be 100% from the gun to the finish line efforts all the way through. So if we get an opportunity, especially this year where some of the races will be smaller, to maybe work on a certain portion, run the last half of the race hard, or work on the last mile, or work on pack running or something like that, we'll do that as well. And then also, I know this, that every time we hear an interview from a national caliber coach, they tell you about all of these great workouts that are magnitudes so almost unfathomable that we're just blown away. And they would say, oh, we can never run with this team or that team. One of the most critical aspects of training, and it's during the last 3 weeks of the season, but it's during this 3 weeks of the season and during every 3 weeks of the season, is you have to find opportunities to get recovery in. Whether it's recovery in the form of recovery runs, whether it's recovery, monitoring the recovery in between intervals or repeats, and I like to keep that low generally, or whether it's just recovery from season to season. And so we'll make sure during the last 3 weeks that we get our recovery in too. And so a lot of our workouts during the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season will look fairly normal and mundane. I mean, we'll warm up, we'll do some drills, we'll run 5 miles or 6 miles, do some strides, maybe do a little bit of core and go home. And you'd say, well, anybody could do that. And you're right, anybody can do that. But it's a matter of consistency in training, making the hard days hard, and giving your body an opportunity to recover. If you leave out that opportunity to recover, it doesn't matter. Anybody can stack workouts. You can stack workouts one on top of another, and anybody can run a kid into the ground. That's not what my program is about. And if it costs us in the end that maybe we weren't as prepared as we should have been, then I'd rather have it that way than for us to be flat as a pancake and, running on fumes.
Coach, we have one more question for you, then we're going to kind of enter in the home stretch and just throw some maybe more fun or kind of goofy things at you. One of the things that we've talked about is that during this time we've grown in some way. We've had to reflect upon our coaching or ourselves as a parent or a teacher or whatever it may be. And so over this COVID time, what's a way that you maybe have grown or changed or had to adapt that that you've improved?
I would say the first thing is I've come back to realize, not that I didn't know this, but I've come back to realize that we all have different situations that we need to deal with. We all deal with stress and anxiety differently. And for me to be sensitive to that for the kids that I work with. Certainly the other thing is I had a wonderful opportunity, Chris. Like I said, my 2 sons one's going to be a senior at the U.S. Air Force Academy and one's going to be a junior. My wife and I don't get to see them very much anymore. My daughter is a young professional here in town and she's local. We get to see her a little more often. But I wasn't anticipating that I get to see my own children for a 3.5-month stretch, which was really, really nice. And then for me to quasi-coach them without being their coach, I was their coach when they were in high school, but for me to help out with their workouts made it a lot of fun. So I grew as a family member to enjoy the time. I stated that my wife and we walk the dog every morning. And so we've been doing some of that and spending some time with the family. And then just understanding that people are coming from different directions in different areas. And they have different thoughts about this. I mean, we all think, COVID, it's just, it's made up here. Or other people think about, I can't leave house. And some people think that they should be going to the pool parties and the bars while other people are locked up in their homes. It's been hard for all of us to understand and for us to deal with all the changes that we've been through.
Coach, we're hitting the home stretch here now, so we're getting close to wrapping up, but we've got to finish fast now. So just some quick, fun questions. Albuquerque Academy, just an incredible athletic history, and Curtis Beach, just a phenomenal athlete himself. Who's the best?
Man, I can tell all kinds of stories about him, but that's another time.
Is he the best, or is there a greater athlete to ever come from Albuquerque Academy?
I would say performance-wise, there's never been anybody as strong as Curtis. He won state 17 times. I saw him run in high school, and this is legit. It's not made up. It was on my watch as well as John Dye's watch. I saw him run mid-45 split one time. Just phenomenal. He was our 8th man at Nike Cross Nationals. He did 13 events at the Great Southwest. He did a a 1.3 decathlon where he did a full decathlon with high school implements at the same time that he worked in the college implements. So he'd get, 3 throws in with the 12-pound shot and then go immediately 5 minutes later to 3 throws in with the 16-pound shot. So I've seen some phenomenal things, but we've had some great athletes. I mean, Ben Johnson ran at Stanford and was an All-American in college in high school, made the world junior cross country team. And my 2 sons, it was so much fun to coach them, and they had their own accomplishments. It was really neat to see. We had a great opportunity to spend 5 or 6 years together in our program. It was one of the most cherished times that I'll ever have in my life. I enjoyed it. Some of the days were hard because they both had super, super high aspirations and wanted to, plow over the world. And it didn't always happen that way, but they had lots of successes too. So that was quite enjoyable as well.
All right, Coach, this is Chris again. If you
Okay.
could fly on the wall for any program, any sport in our country, what would you like to go and be a fly on the wall and just observe?
Oh, that's a tough one. I've never really thought about it. I have good friends in the running community, especially at the high school level. And so I know personally a lot of the national caliber coaches, and I value them and find them to be friends. I am a huge, huge sports fan. People like Joe Madden, I would love to see him work, as well as Mike Krzyzewski. We're all it was sad the day that we lost Mr. Newton from our high school ranks. Wouldn't it be neat to see part of that program? And I heard him speak before. That would be fun. Mark Wetmore runs an incredible program that we'd all like to see and learn from. There's great people in every sport around the country. I was raised a Dolphin fan, so to shadow Bill Belichick probably wouldn't be my number one, because, but yeah, I mean, and you guys see it in your part of the country too, not only at the high school level, but I mean, incredible college programs in all different sports. It's just absolutely amazing. And then to be honest with you, Chris, there's some local coaches around here that I chat with, just like you guys do, that I have such respect for. And such an honor to be friends with them and to know a little bit about their programs and to share a little bit of my program with them. We have a nice camaraderie in our state, and to be part of that. And now as I'm getting older, to kind of be, one of the senior members of that has been a lot of fun for me as well.
So Coach, I've got a much, simpler question for you. Do you all refer to your, short sprints as strides, striders, or build-ups, or something entirely different?
I think there's different names for them. I think there's a difference between a stride, between an acceleration, between a flying 40, and I think there's different purposes for them. I would say generally strides. Striders, I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of weird terminology. Some people call the state championship states, and we don't call that around here. Making it to states? What is states? Well, is it more than one state? Is it plural or what? Yeah. So generally I call them strides. I guess if you were only to do one, I'd call them a stride. I never really use striders though, but as long as the kids are doing them, I call them what you will,
Sure.
Good one.
Well, Coach, based on, you were talking about, being a fan of other coaches. I would have to say, if I could pick somebody that would be, an excellent coach of coaches, you would certainly have my vote. My question is now, let's test your memory. So you said Curtis Beach, 17-time track and field individual state champion. Can
Yes.
you name them all?
When he was a freshman, he won 3 events, and I believe they were the long jump. He won the long jump 4 years in a row. So that's 4 right there, 4 long jumps. He won the 110 hurdles, I believe, 4 years in a row. So that's 8 right there. And I think his freshman year, he won the 300 hurdles. So that's 9. His sophomore year, I would throw in the 300 hurdles. And I never let him triple jump. I was worried about him getting hurt in the triple jump. He could have been a 50-foot triple jumper. I never let him triple jump. And so in sophomore year, I believe he won the 100 as well. So that's 10. His junior year, let me work backwards. I know his senior year, I challenged him to the 300 hurdle, 400 meter double, which was 19 minutes apart. And he wound up winning the first one and winning and setting the state record in the second one. So his senior year was long jump, 110 hurdles, 300 hurdles, 400 and high jump, which means that leaves it out of one other event his junior year. His junior year, he lost an event. He got second place in the 200. I know that. So he only won 4 events his junior year. So, yeah, he got beat in the 200. Crazy. He qualified in 11 events. He wanted to do the steeplechase at the Great Southwest. After he did that 13-event decathlon, he did the 4x8 and the 4x4 at the Great Southwest in the course of 3 days. It was crazy. It was just crazy.
Well, and I've never heard anyone ever refer to winning 4 state titles at one meet in 1 year as only 4. A distinction that can only be said about Curtis Beach. So,
well, Justin asked me to fill out this little sheet before we would bet, and I had to go back and count all the state championships and that phenomenal 86 individual state champs. Well, when start with 17 right off the top, there's half of it right there. And so that was
Coach,
it.
we have to go. We got one last
real
question.
quick, Greg. Back to your statement real quick, Greg, about shadowing my program. Mi casa, su casa. Seriously, you guys ever come out to New Mexico? Kids are out of the house. We got 3 bedrooms extra. So if you guys want to come, run, train, hang out, stop by for dinner, any of you guys, you just give me an email and hopefully we can go to practice too.
I hope you know what you're in for. If you offer anybody at this table a free meal, you're not going to get rid of us. So.
And speaking of meals, this will be our last question. And before we ask, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. And you've done an awesome job and shared so much with our listeners and with us. If we get you back in Kansas City next summer for the 2021 Heartland Distance Summit, do you have any barbecue requests?
I don't know the difference. I'm not a big pork guy, so barbecue, beef, something or another, beef brisket sandwich or ribs, something like that. And I mean, you offered to pay me at one time. I didn't tell you that as long as I got the barbecue that I'd come. But I'm not going back on my deal. So
we're happy for both. We're happy for both. Okay, Coach, thank you so much. Good luck this season. Stay safe, and we hope to see you down the road.
Nice to see you guys.
Thanks, Coach.